It was that time of year again, the time when the air gets a little crisper. The nights make me a little more thankful for the fur coat I wear, and the lady begins to look over her shoulder a little more often. This year, we had decided to nip it in the bud and had begun making our preparations early. It is unlikely that he will attack 2 years in a row, the lady had said, but this is no reason not to be on our toes. Just because he does not come himself doesn't mean there may not be attackers. We will be on our guard, and we won't be caught wanting again. What this translated to mostly was the annual pumpkin patch. The lady had 2 kinds of pumpkin patches this year, cut and uncut. Some guests liked to cut their own, as the weekly carving contest could attest, but others wanted a carved pumpkin without any of the muss or fuss. The lady had a pretty large supply of energy these days, thanks in part to the regular supplies of Stragview, so she found it easy to manipulate the soil in new and interesting ways. The rows of pumpkins came out looking absolutely ghastly, and the patrons loved them. The lady has strived for innovation before, Tobias remarked as we walked amongst the rows, inspecting the gourds for defects, but I don't believe she has ever had this steady a stream of sacrifices. Not since the days of the Saturnine and the riot has she found mortals ready to give themselves to her, and it shows in her work. "Does it make a difference?" I asked, and Tobias laughed in his throat. "But of course, a meal that does not struggle, that does not fight, is a meal of pure energy. So many of those she lures in fight her tooth and nail, but these convicted ones seem almost gleeful to be free of this prison, even if freedom leads to their death. I don't know what goes on in this Stragview, but it must be a wicked place indeed." "You ain't got a clue," came a gruff voice from the row ahead of us. I looked up to see Randy approaching us, his hand resting on the wooden handle of his club. Randy had been in a foul mood lately, and it was no mystery why. He didn't like the sacrifices, he didn't like the work squads, and he didn't like having the warden anywhere near the garden. He wouldn't talk about his time at Stragview, no matter how I asked, and the added security seemed to only be making his mood darker. "Randall, you've been inside the prison. Is it truly so terrible?" Tobias asked, clearly not reading the room. "Pray you never have to go there. It's like living in a storm cloud. You don't ever think the sun will shine again, and all the rain does is fall on your back and bend your spine. I wasn't there long, but it was longer than I wanted to be. There's a darkness there. I can still remember it, and I feel it creeping into here, too." There was a weird, squelchy noise, and Tobias and I stepped back as one of the pumpkins opened its fanged mouth and tried to bite at Randy. It was just a pumpkin. The teeth were no more than mushy gourd, but the idea of being bitten by anything didn't sit well with me. Must have not sat well with Randy either, because his cudgel came down like he'd just been waiting for an opportunity and smashed the pumpkin into a pulp. He glowered down at the mess, wiping his weapon across his leg before putting it away. "That one was clearly defective," he growled, walking off towards the next row, keeping his head low and his eyes on the pumpkins. As creepy as they were, we had been told they were instrumental in keeping the Green Man away. I don't know why, something to do with his early days in this realm, but the Green Man cannot stand the jack-o'-lanterns. I believe the people who were first subjugated by him discovered this and used it to keep him away, and it's a feud he has retained through time. He destroys them whenever he can, corrupts them when he is able, and he never seems free of them. It's one of the few weapons that we have against him, and it's a weapon that we will use. From August to December, the park was always covered in jack-o'-lanterns. Try as we might, it was impossible to keep them in the colder weather, but we grew pumpkins in our greenhouse year-round. The lady could alter the weather, make it summer in the dead of winter, but the pumpkins couldn't last forever, and the Green Man seemed to enjoy destroying them through proxies. I remember well the pumpkin head that we'd had last year during the battle, and remained vigilant against their incursion again. It was nearly fall, a time of shift for us, and we might soon find ourselves under attack again. The threat of attack seemed to be taking a toll on the lady as well. She seemed fitful, unsure of herself, filled with a short-tempered sort of energy. I'd seen people overuse caffeine supplements that seemed to have less energy than her, and she flew from one thing to another with wild abandon. This time of year, it was normal to see her slow down a little and begin to lose some of her energy as the seasons changed. But this year, her mind buzzed like a beehive. The cut pumpkins are coming along nicely, the corn maze will prove to be better than last year's, and the transplants from the Whispering Forest will make for a truly spooky haunted trail this year. I need more, though. I want to truly let the people know that the Gardens are here for this town and thankful for their patronage and sometimes for their sacrifice. Tell me, what else is required for Halloween? I know the tricks and the treating, the candy, the costumes, the trappings, but what else could we do? She asked me this on one of our nightly walks, and it never ceased to amaze me how seriously she took the holidays, or be damned. The lady, despite the danger, loved the holidays that took place during her enemy's time of strength. She loved Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Halloween most of all. Well, sometimes at Halloween parties, people bob for apples. How does one bob for an apple? She asked, mystified. Well, like with your mouth, I said, putting my hands behind my back and dipping my head as I mimed dipping for apples. She nodded, seeming to understand. What else? She asked, leaning in close enough to make me blush a little. Well, my mom always liked candy corn, but I think she was the only one who did. Her face scrunched a little. Candy corn. How can something be candy and corn? I laughed. It can't, not really. It's like wax candy, kinda. It's not really candy or corn. Mom also used to make corn balls as well, something she really liked. Ooh, and candied apples too. When I was a kid, she used to make and hand them out, along with all other kinds of homemade treats, so she could give them to the kids. The lady thought about this for a moment, contemplating it as we walked. It was always strange to discover the holes in her knowledge, but I could see her putting the pieces together, some of them not fitting as neatly as she would have liked them to. It was strange to see the child and the woman at war within her, and when she seized my hand, I jumped a little in surprise. Come, I need some references for these things you speak of. Randy blinked at her as she stood before him, not quite sure that he had heard her correctly. You want a what? I wish to investigate some of these delicacies that your second has told me of. I need you and him to escort me to a place where I might find them, post-haste. Randy looked at me, clearly flustered, and grabbed the keys to his Jeep off the peg. Only one place I can think of where we could find them this time of night, he said. And that's how we found ourselves at Walmart at 11 till midnight. The greeter blinked at us a few times as we walked in, clearly not used to elegantly dressed women coming in at this time of night with an escort, and Randy looked around anxiously as we strode into the harshly lit halls of consumerism. I don't like this, he growled, the canvas coat he'd worn bulging with the shape of his cudgel, his .38 in the opposite pocket. It's too open. If he decides to attack you, we'll have a time getting away. Pish-posh, the lady said, flapping a hand at him. If he wishes to attack me, then he won't do it here, and not until closer to solstice. His power is still small, and we have weeks yet before he will be great enough to move. Now I wish to see this corned candy you speak of." "A candy corn," I corrected, and we made our way to the aisle that had already been set aside for Halloween candy. It was barely August, but Walmart had already set aside an entire double aisle for confections. It was a little weird to be here, knowing what I knew about the town. Walmart stood as an anchor of normalcy in this place, a landmark of everyday life in a town of demons, plural, eldritch deities, magicians who did a little more than parlor tricks, and all the other crazy shit that seems to exist inside or near its borders. Whether the retail giant was aware of the strangeness or not didn't seem to matter. It was happy to take our money and keep our secrets. Her eyes lit up as she saw the assembled treats, and soon our buggy was full of peanut butter cups, various small candy bars, and other assorted candies. She found the candy corn and, to my surprise, corn balls. The candied apples took a little longer to find. They were in produce for some reason, but they had caramel apples too, so that gave us some variety. I made the mistake of mentioning these little ghosts my mom made out of marshmallows after that, which led to s'mores, which led us to go find everything for those as well. The employees probably thought we were crazy as we dragged all that up to the register at 1:20 in the morning, the whole buggy coming to about $120. And as we rode back to the park, the lady in the back seat with her purchases, Randy shook his head at me. "You know you've created a monster, right? There's no telling what will come of this." Watching her in the back seat, as she took in all the splendor, I thought it might be worth the trouble. Any amount of stress, I thought at that moment, would be worth seeing her smile. "You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.